The words hit me like a physical blow. You don't belong here. My ex-husband Richard stood there in his expensive suit, champagne flute in hand, surrounded by his new wife's family at our daughter Mackenzie's UCLA graduation. 15 years of sacrifice, private school tuition, dance competitions, college funds, all dismissed in 5 cruel words. What he didn't know was that I had documented every single payment I'd made since our divorce, every check, every transfer, every receipt, payments I had no legal obligation to make, but did anyway because I loved my daughter more than I resented him. That night, as Mackenzie celebrated with her friends, I sat alone in my hotel room and made a decision. If I truly didn't belong in this family, then neither did my money. By morning, I had already contacted my lawyer. 3 weeks later, Richard's smug smile disappeared when he was served papers demanding repayment of $287,000 with interest. Sometimes the people who try to make you invisible are the ones who end up wishing they'd never seen you coming. I met Richard during my sophomore year at UC Berkeley. He was charming, ambitious, and from a good family in Newport Beach, the kind with country club memberships and summer homes in Cape Cod. I was a scholarship student from Sacramento, working part-time jobs to make ends meet. We married right after graduation. His parents gifted us the down payment for our first home in an upscale Los Angeles suburb, making it clear it was an investment in their son's future. They never quite warmed to me, viewing my middle-class background as something Richard would eventually outgrow. Mackenzie was born 3 years into our marriage. From day one, Richard's mother, Sandra, inserted herself into every decision, from which pediatrician we should use to which preschool would put Mackenzie on the right track for an Ivy League future. When I protested, Richard would say, "Mom's just trying to help. She knows how these things work." I remember Mackenzie's 6th birthday party vividly. Sandra had taken over the planning, turning what should have been a simple backyard celebration into an extravagant affair at the Beverly Hills Hotel. I'd made a homemade cake. Mackenzie had specifically requested my strawberry shortcake, but when I arrived, Sandra had replaced it with an elaborate tiered creation from an expensive bakery. "Oh, honey," she said when she saw my face fall, loud enough for the other mothers to hear, "we couldn't possibly serve that, not at this kind of gathering." That night, Mackenzie cried because she didn't get to eat Mommy's special cake. I found it later, thrown in the trash, still in its container. Our marriage lasted 12 years before Richard left me for his executive assistant, Veronica. She was 10 years younger, came from a wealthy Connecticut family, and fit seamlessly into the world Richard's parents had always wanted for him. The divorce was brutal. Richard's family had connections with the best attorneys in Los Angeles. Despite California being a community property state, Richard's lawyer argued successfully that much of our assets were gifts from his family, not marital property. I walked away with barely enough to rent a modest 2-bedroom apartment. The custody arrangement gave Richard primary custody, with me getting weekends and Wednesday nights. His reasoning to the court was that his home provided stability and educational advantages that my new living situation couldn't match. What wasn't formalized in the divorce decree was any obligation for me to contribute to Mackenzie's private school tuition or extracurricular activities. But I did anyway. I took on extra accounting clients, worked weekends, and even sold my car for a cheaper model to ensure I could contribute. Not because Richard asked, he never did, but because I wanted Mackenzie to have every opportunity. I kept meticulous records of every payment, initially just for tax purposes. Each transfer came with a note for Mackenzie's spring semester at Westlake Prep, or contribution to dance competition fees. Richard never acknowledged these payments verbally, but he accepted them without hesitation. When Mackenzie was accepted to UCLA, I was overjoyed. I'd secretly started a college fund for her when she was 10, putting aside what little I could each month. By her senior year of high school, I had saved $43,000. I presented her with a check at her high school graduation party, a party I wasn't allowed to help plan, but was graciously invited to attend by Sandra. Richard seemed genuinely surprised by the amount. "Where did you get that kind of money?" he asked later, as if the concept of saving was foreign to him. What he didn't know was that I'd been living in the same apartment for years, foregoing vacations and new clothes, all to give Mackenzie this gift. "I've always provided for my daughter," was all I said. It was the first time I saw a flicker of something like respect in his eyes. UCLA's graduation ceremony fell on a perfect California June day. Clear skies, 75 degrees, with just enough breeze to keep everyone comfortable in their formal wear. The event was being held at the Pauley Pavilion, and I'd arrived an hour early to secure good seats. I wore a new navy blue dress I'd splurged on for the occasion, my first real luxury purchase in years. As I waited in line to enter, I received a text from Mackenzie. "Dad's family got reserved seating in the front section. Meet us there?" I felt a flutter of anxiety, but pushed it down. This day wasn't about the divorce or old tensions. It was about celebrating Mackenzie's achievement. When I reached the reserved section, I saw them immediately. Richard, Veronica, Sandra, and her husband George, Richard's sister and her family, and even Veronica's parents, whom I'd never met. They occupied nearly an entire row near the front, all dressed impeccably. Mackenzie spotted me and waved enthusiastically. "Mom, over here!" She looked radiant in her graduation attire, and for a moment, everything else faded away. I hugged her tightly, whispering how proud I was. "There's a seat saved for you," she said, pointing to a spot at the far end of their row, separated from the main group by a couple of empty seats. Sandra gave me a tight smile as I approached. "Sarah, you look, well," she said, her eyes doing a quick assessment of my outfit. "We weren't sure you'd make it on time." "I wouldn't miss this for anything," I replied, trying to keep my tone light. I've been looking forward to this day since Mackenzie was in kindergarten. Richard barely acknowledged my presence with a nod before turning back to a conversation with Veronica's father. I noticed Veronica was wearing a designer dress I recognized from a magazine, something well beyond what I could afford, even after saving for months. As we waited for the ceremony to begin, the family chatted excitedly about the celebration dinner they'd planned at Spago in Beverly Hills. No one had mentioned this dinner to me. "Is everyone ready for tonight?" Sandra asked, looking around at the group, but deliberately avoiding eye contact with me. "I made reservations for 8. 8? There were 9 of us sitting in the row. Mackenzie looked uncomfortable. "Grandma, I told you I wanted Mom to come too." Sandra waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, darling, I'm sure your mother already has plans. This is more of a family thing." I felt my face burn. After 15 years, I was still not considered family. "Actually," I said calmly, "I don't have other plans. I've been focused on celebrating with Mackenzie today." An awkward silence fell over the group. Richard cleared his throat and leaned forward to look down the row at me. Sarah, be reasonable. This dinner has been planned for months. It's at Spago. It's not like we can just add another chair. Of course you can, Mackenzie interjected. Mom should be there. Veronica placed a manicured hand on Mackenzie's arm. Sweetie, it's just that we have a set menu arranged, and the reservation is under my father's name. It's complicated to change things last minute at a place like Spago. I recognized the technique, making it seem like logistics, not intention, was the barrier to my inclusion. But before I could respond, the ceremony music began, and we all turned our attention to the procession. Throughout the ceremony, I tried to focus on my daughter's achievement, but I couldn't help noticing the family taking photos, sharing knowing glances, and making plans in hushed voices, all without including me. When Mackenzie's name was called and she walked across the stage, we all stood and cheered. In that moment, I felt connected to them through our shared pride. That feeling was short-lived. After the ceremony, we gathered outside for photos. The professional photographer Sandra had hired directed various group shots. First, the whole family, then just with Richard and Veronica, then with grandparents. No one suggested a photo with me until Mackenzie did. "Mom, get in here with me," she called. Richard frowned slightly, but stepped aside. As Mackenzie and I posed together, Sandra said loudly enough for nearby families to hear, "Let's make this quick. We don't want to be late for our reservation." When the photos were done, Mackenzie was quickly surrounded by classmates wanting to congratulate her. In that moment of distraction, Richard approached me, standing uncomfortably close. "Why are you pushing this dinner issue?" he said in a low voice. "You're making Mackenzie uncomfortable on her big day." I kept my voice steady. "I'm not pushing anything. I just want to celebrate our daughter's graduation." Richard's face hardened. "After all these years, you still don't get it, do you? This isn't your world, Sarah. These aren't your people." I felt something crack inside me, the last thread of restraint I'd been clinging to for Mackenzie's sake. These aren't my people? I've contributed to every aspect of her life. I've paid for. He cut me off with a dismissive wave. "Nobody asked you to do that. That was your choice." Then he leaned in closer, his voice just above a whisper, but filled with a coldness I'd never heard before, even during our worst divorce arguments. "You don't belong here. You never have." 5 words. That's all it took to crystallize 15 years of slights, exclusions, and barely concealed contempt. "You don't belong here. Never have." I stood frozen, watching Richard walk back to his real family, the ones who belonged, the ones who mattered. Something shifted inside me in that moment, not just anger, though there was plenty of that, but clarity, perfect, undeniable clarity. I spotted Mackenzie making her way back to us through the crowd. Her face was flushed with excitement as friends congratulated her. She deserved better than to have her graduation day ruined by family drama. So I made a quick decision to keep my composure for now. "Mom," she hugged me again. "Can you believe it? I actually did it." "You did it, sweetheart. I never doubted you for a second." I held her at arm's length, memorizing her joyful face. "Listen, about that dinner." Her expression fell slightly. "I'm so sorry about that. I thought Grandma had included you." "I'll talk to Dad." No, I said quickly. "Don't worry about it. You go and enjoy your dinner with them. We'll have our own celebration tomorrow, just you and me. How about brunch at that place in Venice you love?" Relief washed over her face, mixed with a hint of guilt. "Are you sure? I feel terrible about this." Absolutely sure. This is your day. Enjoy every minute of it. I squeezed her hand. But before you go, can I borrow your phone? Mine's dead, and I need to call an Uber. She handed it over without hesitation. While pretending to order a ride, I quickly opened her calendar app. Just as I suspected, the Spago reservation had been made 3 months ago for 8 people. I returned her phone with a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. All set? As the family gathered to leave, Sandra made a show of saying goodbye to me. "Such a shame you can't join us," she said, not sounding sorry at all. "Perhaps next time." I nodded pleasantly. Perhaps, though I'm thinking the next family gathering might be quite different. Something in my tone made her pause, but she quickly recovered and ushered everyone toward their waiting cars. I watched them drive away, then walked to my car. Instead of going home, I drove straight to my office. I worked as a senior accountant at a mid-size firm specializing in financial forensics. The irony wasn't lost on me that I'd spent years tracking other people's money while allowing my own to slip away unacknowledged. The office was empty on a Saturday evening. I unlocked my drawer and pulled out a thick folder labeled Mackenzie Expenses. Inside was a meticulously maintained record of every payment I'd made toward my daughter's upbringing since the divorce. Private school tuition, summer camps, dance lessons, orthodontist bills, SAT prep courses, college application fees, and countless other expenses, all with corresponding bank statements, receipts, and often text messages from Richard acknowledging the payments. Next to this folder was another, thinner one, legal options. I'd consulted with a lawyer friend 6 months earlier, just theoretically exploring what recourse I might have if I ever decided to pursue reimbursement. At the time, it had been more of a mental exercise than a serious plan. I spread the documents across my desk and began calculating. The total took my breath away. $287,000, $423.16 over 15 years. With reasonable interest, it approached $350,000. I picked up my phone and called Mark Levinson, one of the best family law attorneys in Los Angeles. We'd worked together on several cases, and I'd helped him with financial forensics for his clients. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Sarah, everything okay?" "I need your help, Mark. Professionally. How soon can we meet?" 3 days later, I sat in Mark's office as he reviewed my documentation. "This is remarkably thorough," he said, flipping through the folders. "Most people don't keep records like this." "I'm an accountant," I replied simply. He leaned back in his chair. "You understand this won't be easy. These weren't court-ordered payments. Richard could argue they were gifts." "They weren't gifts. They were child support that wasn't formalized of our decree but was understood between us. I have texts where he acknowledges the purpose of the payments." Mark nodded slowly. "That helps. But Sarah, are you sure you want to do this? It's going to be messy, very messy." I thought about Richard's words at the graduation, about 15 years of being treated like an outsider in my own daughter's life, about Sandra throwing my homemade cake in the trash. "I'm sure," I said. "If I don't belong in their family, then my money doesn't belong in their pockets." 2 weeks later, on a Wednesday when I knew Richard would be at his office, Mark's associate served him with papers demanding repayment of $287,423.16, plus 5% interest compounded annually, for a total of $349,864.72. By Wednesday evening, my phone was exploding with messages. From Richard, "Is this some kind of joke?" From Sandra, "You ungrateful, vindictive woman." From Veronica, "How could you do this to our family?" The only call I answered was from Mackenzie. "Mom, what's happening? Dad is absolutely losing it." I took a deep breath. "Sweetheart, this is between your father and me. It's about financial matters that go back many years. He says you're trying to bankrupt him, that you're demanding hundreds of thousands of dollars out of nowhere." "Not out of nowhere," I said quietly. "I paid for half your education and activities since the divorce, Mackenzie, all voluntarily, all because I love you. But at your graduation, your father made it very clear that I'm not part of your family, never was. So I'm simply asking for my investment back." The line went silent for so long I thought she'd hung up. "Did Dad really say that to you?" she finally asked, her voice small. "Yes, right after the ceremony." Another long pause. "I need some time to process this." "I understand. I love you, Mackenzie. That will never change." After we hung up, I sat in my apartment, finally feeling something I hadn't felt in 15 years. Powerful. The legal battle that followed was exactly as messy as Mark had warned. Richard's initial response was to claim that all my contributions had been voluntary gifts with no expectation of repayment. His lawyer, a sharply dressed man from the same firm that had handled our divorce, argued that my claim was vindictive and without legal merit. But Mark was prepared. He presented text message exchanges where Richard had specifically requested money for Mackenzie's expenses, my bank records showing regular payments coinciding with school tuition due dates, and most damaging, emails where Richard had discussed these payments as my share of Mackenzie's expenses. 2 weeks into the proceedings, I received an unexpected call from Mackenzie. "Mom, can we meet? Just us?" We arranged to meet at a small coffee shop in Santa Monica, far from her father's usual haunts. When she arrived, I was shocked by how tired she looked. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she said after ordering her latte, "and a lot of asking questions." She placed a manila folder on the table between us. Inside were photos, dozens of them from her childhood events, dance recitals, school plays, science fairs, soccer games. In every single one, I was standing apart from the main family group, often literally in the background. "I never noticed before," she said quietly, "how they positioned you, how they always made sure there was distance." I swallowed hard. "I didn't want to burden you with adult problems." "That's just it, Mom. I'm not a child anymore, so I started asking direct questions." She took a deep breath. "Did you know that Dad told everyone my college fund came primarily from him and Grandma? That your contribution was symbolic?" I hadn't known, but I wasn't surprised. When I confronted him about what he said to you at graduation, he claimed you misunderstood. But then I asked Veronica, and she got really uncomfortable. She eventually admitted he said exactly what you claimed. Mackenzie reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I didn't see what was happening all these years." Tears pricked at my eyes. "You weren't supposed to see it. You were supposed to have a happy childhood, but at your expense." She squeezed my hand. "There's something else you should know. Dad's business isn't doing as well as everyone thinks. Grandma and Grandpa have been helping him financially for years." This was news. Richard's investment firm had always projected an image of tremendous success. "How do you know this?" "I overheard arguments after they were served with your lawsuit. Apparently, they've been keeping up appearances. The house, Veronica's shopping, my tuition. But they're extended. Really extended." 3 days later, Mark called with surprising news. Richard wanted to settle. "His lawyer is practically begging," Mark said. They want to keep this quiet and out of court. The settlement offer was $200,000, significantly less than my full claim, but still substantial. The agreement would include a non-disclosure clause, preventing either of us from discussing the settlement publicly. "What do you think?" Mark asked. I considered my options. Fighting for the full amount might take years and cost a fortune in legal fees. And there was Mackenzie to consider. How would a protracted legal battle affect her? Counter at $250,000, payable within 30 days, and I want something else added to the agreement. What's that? An acknowledgement from Richard, in writing, that these were not gifts, but my financial contributions to my daughter's upbringing. I don't care if no one else ever sees it. I just want him to admit it. Surprisingly, Richard agreed to both demands. Mark speculated that Sandra and George were probably helping fund the settlement to protect the family reputation. The day after the agreement was signed, Mackenzie called me again. "Dad told me about the settlement," she said. "He also mentioned you made him sign some kind of statement." "It was important to me," I said simply. "I get it. And Mom, I want you to know that I found my own apartment. I'm moving out of Dad's house next week." This was unexpected. "Honey, you don't have to do that because of me." "It's not just because of you. It's for me. I need some space to figure out who I am outside of all this family drama. And I've decided to defer my job offer and apply to graduate programs in social work." "Social work? I thought you were set on following your father into finance." She laughed softly. "That was never my dream. That was Dad's. I want to help families navigate difficult transitions, like divorce, custody issues, financial problems. Maybe if someone had helped us back then, things would have been different." I felt a surge of pride so intense it nearly took my breath away. 2 months later, I received a certified letter from Richard's attorney. Inside was a cashier's check for $250,000 and a sealed envelope with my name handwritten on it. Inside that envelope was a single page with 3 sentences. "I acknowledge that all funds provided by Sarah Jensen since our divorce were her contributions to Mackenzie's upbringing and education. These were not gifts, but her share of parental financial responsibility. I regret any suggestion to the contrary." It wasn't an apology, but it was an acknowledgement. For now, that was enough. I deposited $200,000 of the settlement into my account. With the remaining $50,000, I established a scholarship fund at UCLA for children of divorce who demonstrated financial need. I named it after Mackenzie, though I didn't tell her immediately. That fall, Mackenzie and I developed a new Sunday tradition: brunch followed by long walks along the beach in Santa Monica. During one of these walks, she asked me a question that caught me off guard. "Mom, what are you going to do with the settlement money?" I told her about the scholarship fund, watching as tears filled her eyes. That's amazing." She hugged me tightly. "You know it's ironic? Dad and Grandma always acted like you didn't belong in their world because you didn't have their money or connections. But you've always had something they never did. What's that? Integrity, an actual financial sense." She laughed. "Dad's lawyer called him yesterday. Apparently, Grandma and Grandpa are selling their vacation home to help him restructure his business debt." I felt no satisfaction at Richard's financial troubles, but I did feel something shift in my relationship with my daughter. For the first time, she was seeing her parents clearly, not through the lens of childhood or manipulation. 6 months after the settlement, I received a surprising invitation to Mackenzie's graduate school acceptance celebration. What made it surprising wasn't the event itself, but the location, my apartment. "I want a small gathering," she explained. "Just people who truly support me. No drama, no pretense." On the day of the celebration, my modest apartment was filled with Mackenzie's closest friends, my sister, who had flown in from Sacramento, and two of Mackenzie's favorite professors from UCLA. Richard wasn't invited. Neither were Sandra and George. As I watched my daughter laughing and talking animatedly about her plans for graduate school, I realized something profound had changed. For 15 years, I had measured my worth as a mother by how much I could financially contribute to Mackenzie's life, trying to compete with Richard's wealth and influence. But what Mackenzie valued wasn't the money I'd spent. It was the love and support I'd given without conditions or expectations. The settlement money sat mostly untouched in my account. Eventually, I used some of it to make a down payment on a small condo closer to UCLA, where Mackenzie would be attending graduate school. The rest I invested, something I'd always been good at, but had sacrificed to fund Mackenzie's expenses. Sometimes I think about Richard's words at the graduation. "You don't belong here." He was right, but not in the way he meant. I didn't belong in a family that measured worth by wealth or status. I didn't belong in relationships based on appearances rather than genuine connection. What he never understood was that belonging isn't something others grant you. It's something you claim for yourself. Today, 3 years later, I have a different perspective on what happened. That moment of humiliation at Mackenzie's graduation wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of my liberation. Mackenzie is now finishing her master's in social work and has already helped dozens of families navigate the emotional and financial complexities of divorce. We have dinner together every Sunday, and she recently introduced me to someone special in her life, a kind, thoughtful law student who treats her with the respect she deserves. As for Richard, I heard through Mackenzie that his business eventually recovered, though on a smaller scale. Sandra and George sold their Newport Beach home and downsized to a condo. Sometimes karma works in unexpected ways. The money I reclaimed wasn't just about dollars and cents. It was about reclaiming my dignity. For years, I'd allowed myself to be defined by Richard's perception of me. Now, I define myself. If you're watching this and feel unappreciated or invisible in your own life, remember, you don't need anyone's permission to claim your worth. Sometimes, the people who try to diminish you are the ones who fear your power the most. Don't wait 15 years like I did to stand up for yourself. You belong exactly where you choose to be. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience and self-discovery. Share your own story in the comments below, because every voice deserves to be heard.